I mean, if we cling to it should be this way or it shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't be how it is, then we're not really being effortless. We really have to surrender. The most powerful thing, there's actually a book called The Power of Awareness, which I highly recommend. Making no effort whatsoever and accepting and allowing everything to be exactly as it is what Jiddu Krishnamurti recommended to come full circle. And also Eckhart Tolle to just experience the pain body and realize that the pain body just needs to be felt. And if we just allow ourselves to experience and accept what is there as it is without trying to change it, it becomes integrated and digested by that effortless awake awareness, which is choiceless and mirror-like, and is woven and is reignited to be able to be liberated from being polarized and polarizing. And that's why I would say, who is, and others who have also been adjudicated in these military tribunals,
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. As always, a blessing to be with you all today. And remember, if you're loving the shows or if you're not loving the shows, subscribe, leave me a comment and let me know what you thought about the show and how it changed your life, or send me an email. So I have an amazing man to introduce you to today, and I'm sure many of you might have come across Sperry over the years. His name is Sperry Andrews. Welcome to the show, Sperry.
Thank you, Karen. Lovely to be with you and with your viewing audience.
I've been aware of you for some time now, watching you over the years, but it wasn't until I was on the Wisdom Conference with Geraldine's Wisdom Conference, and I saw you there participating, and I'm like, oh, there's Sperry. And I felt like after years of sort of seeing you do your work, I felt I needed to reach out to you to have a conversation with you on the show, because you've got a lot of things going, and I think you've got something quite exciting happening at the moment, haven't you?
Yes, indeed.
So let me tell people who don't know about Sperry a little bit about you from your bio. Sperry Andrews is an artist, and you'll see, those people that are watching on video platforms, you'll see the art behind us. This is Sperry's art. But foremost, he's a scientist and a founder and the director of the Human Connection Institute, HCI. Sperry has collaborated with eminent scientists and educators conducting both objective and experimental research into the emergence of a commonly sensed consciousness. He and a team of international researchers have found irrefutable evidence that the whole of humanity, everyone, is linked to both psychologically and physiologically by our innate capacity for being collectively conscious. In collaboration with neuroscientists and film producers, Sperry is working on creating easily accessible experience of oneness to give a unity experience to everyone willing to participate. He has a background in physics, neuroscience, parapsychology, philosophy, art and art history, healing, mysticism, and filmmaking, and for over 30 years has explored two-way telepathic awareness with hundreds of groups and thousands of individuals. Sperry has given presentations on his institute projects at the United Nations, World Business Academy, Duke University, University of Connecticut, and the Association of Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. And Sperry's Human Connection project began when he helped a Mind Scientist Foundation in San Antonio, Texas in 1988. So you've been at this for a few years, Sperry. Yes, he's nodding for those people listening on audio. And you're also, I've lost myself, collaborating with psychologist Dr. William Broad for 5 years and as an adjunct research association in the 90s. You've developed techniques that are readily learned and lived in everyday life, helping hundreds of people in the US and Europe achieve and maintain experiences of connective consciousness. And as the founder of the Human Connection Institute, you orchestrate large-scale, spiritually inspired, multinational, scientifically based media projects designed to facilitate humanity's imminent leap into a collective enlightenment. So you're currently working on a V-book or an e-book with videos about the physics of freedom, peace, love, and joy amongst the pieces. That sounds fascinating.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. What I found is that this new brain, this conceptual, verbal, analytic part of us that is like a child trying to understand what it can learn and mimic in its own unique way from its parents, the reptilian sensory motor nervous system, which is far more mature, and the emotional, heartfelt mammalian limbic system. And so there's sort of mommy and daddy, and they're both very nonverbal. And the very verbal, objectifying part of us is kind of taken over the whole planet. And we're labeled and labeling each other and labeling everything. And we're so busy with our sticky notes that we are lost the sense of being non-verbally undivided from the earth, from nature, from one another, from love itself. And so my work is really about how to get us back into that as soon as possible through film and social media and these events that I've been offering for almost 40 years now internationally with multicultural audiences. So the V-book or e-book or audiobooks and so forth, those are all part of that mass education offering. And the latest one is called the Global Empathy Accelerator Partnership Proposal, which all of you that are listening might want to get involved with this or contribute to it in some way, it's about a $27 million project, involves many filmmakers, basically recording this sense of indivisibility when we really feel it in a fully embodied way, like when we share oneness in a heartfelt way, when we hold a child or a beloved to our heart, and we both feel that we're feeling together and sensing in an undivided way together, which is, I would say, indistinguishable from unconditional love, this communion of all that we are as one, as well as being two or many. In this case, 7.5 billion of us can actually, as nature has designed us to be able to do, in order to end the kinds of conflict that we have been subjecting ourselves to for so many millennia, that just by shifting what we pay attention to in the moment, if we attend to attention itself in an undivided way, this is what the mystics and sadhus and sages and yogis have been saying, the Buddhists and Hindus, for thousands of years, that all we need to do is become aware of awareness. So right now, as we become aware, talking about it, of this awareness that's receiving what we're feeling and sensing and thinking individually and indivisibly together, the more acutely sensitive we are to awareness, it's like becoming aware of a mirror receiving and reflecting what we appear to be, what we perceive ourselves to be. And the mirror itself, this awakeness, I like to use the word awakeness for that quality of awareness that has no image of its own, it's choiceless. It's the only part or aspect of consciousness that is eternally present. It has no image of its own, and so it cannot be divided by imagery, by thoughts and feelings and sensations, or yours or mine, as a mirror does. We both, let's say a whole bunch of us stand in front of a big mirror. The mirror instantly receives us and reflects us back to ourselves. And that's essentially what our nervous system is designed to do. And when our body, heart, and mind, as a triune brain, as they call it, McLean did this work in these three parts of our brain, when the body, heart, and mind work together, and all of our bodies, hearts, and mind work together to receive and reflect like a mirror, which is a term that has been used going back through Hinduism and Buddhism for a very long time in their writing, that this mirror-like quality that is timeless and ever-present, and it's empty of thought and identity and ego. So when we're aware of it together, we're transported into this state of blissful, unconditionally loving communion that we feel with every leaf and bug and person in the cosmos, if you will. And that's really what this awakening is about here on this planet. And it's already happened on other planets, if you're into the exopolitical revelations that are being put forward more and more every day, that there are those extraterrestrial races that are here communicating with us that say, look, we've got billions of us in my species, in my race, and we have learned to share all that we're aware of collectively, indivisibly by every one of us, and that has caused our nervous systems to exponentially develop and evolve, so that we are seemingly millions of years in advance of you here on this earth. But we don't feel better than you. There's only one of us, really. There's only one people in the universe. And the universe is growing this sentient consciousness. And one of the extraterrestrial races has said that the universe is a soul, S-O-U-L, a soul manufacturing facility. And so we've actually been filled with for hundreds of thousands of years by these different extraterrestrial races. And some of them are afraid of us. They want to not allow us to continue evolving. And others, the majority, thankfully, have been tinkering with our DNA so that we would be even more sensitive, more resilient than they have been able to be. And so we're like their children, and they're very proud of us. They're excited, and they would look at us as their heroes, like we would look at our children as heroic, that they're going to go beyond us as their parents, and we do everything we can to get them to have all the opportunities that we think we missed. And so we're in a wonderful spot right now. We're just trying to survive the insane people that want to get rid of us. And we will. The looking glass technology, if you know what that is, has already predicted the future as
we will. I just want to
irreconcilable.
Okay. Well, I think as consciousness teachers, Sperry, we've got our work cut out for us, because just like you said, humanity is obsessed with intellect and thinking and distraction and iPhones and, you know, success and getting what we want. And we don't always sit still long enough to actually have an experience of cohesion and connection with another human being, or with every human being, until we do. And for many, that takes a sledgehammer moment, a spiritual sledgehammer moment, or some people have called it the dark night of the soul, some sort of spiritually awakening experience for people to start asking different questions and seeking different answers to what life's about. It's not just about success and money and, you know, getting all those sort of material things that we think we want. And that happened to you. Well, I think you've probably had many spiritually transformative experiences, but I'd love you to tell our audience about what you experienced when you were in Australia in your 30s.
Well, thank you, Karen. Start off, I had a near-death experience when I was 4 years old, so I was highly sensitized how divided and objectified and self-isolating people were, my parents and brother and sister on either side of me. And in my intimate partnerships, the reason they didn't work out is because we couldn't really mutually understand what it was to be the other. And so I finally just put my foot down and I said, I'm going to Northern Australia and I'm going to live in a non-denominational ashram. And I ended up living in a garden shed for quite a while. And I was meditating every day and walking out into nature and finding wild horses and just sitting down, and just the longer I would sit still, the more magnificent it would become, and nature would come alive, and it would feel like the winds of the cosmos would be very gently blowing through the bones and molecules and cells of my body, and so beautiful. And I was just fasting on a little wheatgrass I would chew in the morning, and that would do me for the rest of the day. So it got to the point where one night I was reading a book I had called The Awakening of Intelligence by Jiddu Krishnamurti. It was a collection of conversations that he had had, one of them with Vivekananda, who had really blown away the United States, what is it, maybe 40, 50 years ago at least. She was so deep and distinguished, and he would bring thousands of people into unity consciousness just talking to them. And so Vivekananda was saying, well, you know, not everybody can just, you know, be pointed to the door, Jiddu, and then they could walk up to the door frame and step through into another world, like people stepping out of Plato's cave, out of the darkness, chained to the rock somewhere. And so I give them yoga and I give them meditations and things like that to keep them busy, and mantras and chants and so forth. And Jiddu Krishnamurti said, who really was my first real teacher. I never met him, but just reading 2 lines of Jiddu Krishnamurti would stop my mind dead in its tracks. And I would be in utter silence, just in awe and wonder, experiencing the world through that stillness that, as Eckhart Tolle said, it's stillness that will save the world. So Jiddu Krishnamurti says to Vivekananda, make no effort. There, all this brutality and unconsciousness and self-serving egotism, all of that will drop away if you just make no effort. So I was very impressed by that, and I said, well, I don't really know how to make no effort. And I had been, you know, meditating and pretty much spending all my time by myself, just being self-aware and wandering around, wondering. And so I'd gotten to this point, was one of the reasons I was reading the book, was that the whole self-made, mind-made identity that normally had possession of my awareness was crumbling and dissolving, had been over a number of days. And I was feeling afraid that I might lose myself. What would happen to me? I'd be sucked into this vortex of nothingness, and that would be the end of me. And I had no idea no mind-made idea anyway, no emotional sense of, or sensory awareness of what would happen to me. But this was very intriguing, and I trusted Jiddu Krishnamurti, and I said, okay, I'm going to experientially explore making no effort whatsoever. And so I just explored doing nothing except being awake and aware. And that, because I was meditating a lot, I didn't need to sleep. And through the night, I was awake and aware. And by the next morning, I sort of propped myself up my elbows, and I was looking straight ahead of me, just at the everything and nothing as a whole. And suddenly this sort of ectoplasmic glop formed in front of my eyes, about maybe 2 feet in front of them. And it was kind of like a cloud moving and changing shape, but it had these sort of awful kind of gooey, yucky kind of colors to it. And it didn't feel, it felt very dense. It felt much more dense than a cloud. And my automatic reaction was to want to turn away and not look at it, because it was revolting and some revulsive or whatever. And so, because of the quality of my consciousness at that time, I felt like, no, I'm just going to keep looking at it in an undivided way with undivided attention and find out what happens. Because if I turn away, it might chase me or something. Who knows what would happen? So I just kept looking at it, and it felt like everything that I had never been fully conscious of. It was like everything I had denied awareness of in my whole life was like assembled in this ectoplasmic glop that was so like yuck. And by just recognizing that that's probably what it might be, in about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, it just like went whoop and turned back into completely translucent, transparent nothingness, mirror-like awakeness. And I was like vaulted into this state of being nothing at all, which had no boundary, no beginning or end. It was timeless. And everything in the physical, sensory, emotional, and mental world became like a dream, but it was a lucid dream, and I was not asleep. And so it was the most ecstatically blissful, beautiful quality. It was like every single atom and molecule in my physical body was pure consciousness, pure awakeness, this mirror-like awakeness that was now omnipresent and omnipotent and omniscient, because everything was being assembled and reassembled, as can happen in a lucid dream. It can feel as though when it becomes conscious, a lucid dream is, when it's conscious, is actually being guided by the quality of our consciousness. And so the quality of my self-aware consciousness, where consciousness was conscious of itself, now allowed the physical, emotional, and mental world to be a construct that was like a top. When you spin it, will conform to the axis, the dimensionless axis around which it's spinning, or a car wheel or a bicycle wheel. The mass and energy and momentum will conform to the placement of that dimensionless axis that has no, by having no dimension, there's no resistance, no friction. And so I became frictionless. But instead of being located at an axis, the axis was everywhere and had no boundary. And it was so beautiful. And I felt there was no me. It was like in the near-death experience. Finally, I got back to my near-death experience, but I didn't have to die in order to experience it. So it had only taken me 2 years to get back to my near-death experience. And for some bizarre reason, I decided I'm going to go out to the roadway, which was, we were completely isolated to the tablelands of Milla, North Queensland. And it was nighttime at this point, and full moon night of all things. And I decided I was going to go out to the road and hitch a ride to go buy this used car, because I had never really been able to go very much of any place because I didn't have any kind of vehicle, which was over 2 hours away, and just for a lark, for something to do while being in the state of consciousness. So I got out to the road. I'm standing out there perfectly happy. Nothing has to happen. I'm not attached at all. And the moon was huge, and it felt like it was as much in my knee and in my pinky and in my heart and everywhere in the sky as much as it appeared to be up there. And a bird that was singing was like was chirping, some kind of night bird. It felt like it was in my hand, in my elbow, in my inside of me and outside of me, and all simultaneously. It was amazing to feel that everything was everywhere and nowhere all at once. And it was really exquisite. I mean, it was impossible for anything to be boring at this point. Nothing was uninteresting and uplifting and transcendental and mystical. So after a while of being, kind of without thinking at all, there was no thought, but there was this intuitive, non-verbal, like the way the heart feels and the body can sense. It's not talking like the mind and the brain talks. There's experiential knowing or pure intelligence. As Eckhart Tolle would say, awareness is pure intelligence. So I was like pure intelligence that was everywhere and nowhere. And about a quarter mile away, I see this car appearing in the distance with its headlights on. And the first thought occurs to me is, wouldn't it be nice if this person stopped and took me to Atherton, which is nearby where these people had the car that I was interested in buying. And so that was my only thought. And it was such a relaxed thought, like, wouldn't it be nice, Later I've heard, gurus say, yeah, just very relaxed. If you want something, feel it, that you already have it, it's already possible, and just say, thank you very much, I would love that. And it happens, right? And so the car comes, and I can't even see the person in the car yet. And the driver just like grinds. I mean, suddenly just slams on the brakes and skids to a stop in the dirt on the side of the road, because it's that kind of a road. And the dust is kind of up, and then it's beginning to settle. And she starts rolling down the window of the car. I see it's this very diminutive little Japanese woman. And she looks very dazed, like, oh, what's going on, like this? And she looks out the window and looks at me in this kind of like, oh my God, what am I doing kind of way, and says, where are you going? And I say, I'm going to Atherton. And I mean, I didn't know whether she knew where that was. And she said, okay, get in the car, I'll take you. So I get in the car, and I don't say anything. I just sit down next to her. It's a little car. And she starts going. And she says, after a while, because we're just driving along, what are you doing? Like she couldn't figure me out. You know how women are very intuitive or whatever, and so she's like, because I'm not saying anything, she wants me to tell her what I'm doing. So I like looked into it all, as everything and nothing and all that was happening and not happening. And I said, well, I'm just being everything that I'm conscious of, which seemed to keep it in focus without words taking it out of focus. And she got what I was saying intellectually and emotionally and physically, and we just merged completely. We just shifted and fell into unity consciousness, and there was only one of us at that point. And then when she would speak, it would like bubble up energetically from inside of me, up through my heart, body, and mind, into my thinking mind, and be registered and understood. And the same thing when I would speak, it would like bubble up through her, and I would feel it, and she would feel me feeling it bubbling up through her into her mind, and her comprehending and grokking what I'm saying. And so it was really an amazing, very, very spare conversation, but highly transformative to be able to talk and be felt and understood empathically at that depth, at that level. And so we drove on mostly in silence. And, but the next thing she asked me was, she told me that she was very afraid that she had, because she just lived up the road from where she picked me up about 10 or 15 minutes, that she had left her newborn child with her neighbor, and that she was afraid that the neighbor might do some harm to her child. And did I think that that's possible? And I kind of took that in and kind of felt a little bit of indigestion. Like, how am I supposed to know the answer to that? And then, but I just didn't make any effort, as Jiddu Krishnamurti would recommend. And I just digested it, and I just felt deeply in a fully embodied way and said, no, I don't think so. I think your child is fine. No worries, like they say in Australia. And she relaxed, and I could just feel her just like let go of some level of tension that she had been holding. And she just sort of sighed almost silently and was just like, oh, thank God, kind of thing, without even saying anything. And I was like, oh, we were both able to be more relaxed after that. And we drove on into the night, and arrived in Atherton actually, we had to stop along the way. Had to stop and use a payphone to call the people who had the car to ask if they could come and pick me up in Atherton. So I didn't know really where they were either. And they said, oh yeah, certainly, and there was this feeling of rapport and an effortless agreement just happening, just bang like that. And we agreed that we would meet in a week, because I felt that she wanted to keep going with feeling this way. And eventually it turned out that these people had to go 20 miles each direction to come and pick me up. So they came and got me and brought me back to their house, and they sat me down in their kitchen and immediately started asking me questions like she had asked me. So the wife says, my husband kicks the cows. What do we do about it? And I'm like, go through the slight indigestion of like, well, how am I supposed to know what you're supposed to do about that? But I just felt it, made no effort. And it just made sense to say, well, you don't have to kick the cows. And they just went, oh, and felt it, all three of us, as one body, heart, and mind. And they, with the cows, I'm not kidding, with the cows. And he got it, that he didn't have to kick the cows, for heaven's sakes. And that was that. And then they had a couple other questions. And they felt totally satisfied. And they said, well, why don't you spend the night here? It's kind of late. It was like 11 o'clock at that point. And I said, well, okay, sure. Not making any resistance of any kind. And so they gave me a room by myself and a cot to sleep on. And I, laid down, pulled the covers over me and closed my eyes. And I went into dreamless sleep, which, if you've heard, yogis talk about, that sleep is the enemy of the yogi. That if you go into dreamless sleep, it's better than sleeping, where you go unconscious, because you stay conscious of being consciousness throughout the night, and your whole body gets a full rest. Your body, heart, and mind as a whole, as an integrated whole, gets this deep, deep rest. And so I went into the state of dreamless sleep, where I was like the night sky, where there were no stars or anything like that, but it was sort of sparkly, like like quasi-particles appearing and disappearing out of the 0-point vacuum or something like that. This is before I even heard anything about the 0-point vacuum. And so I'm like, wow. And it was so peaceful and so natural, and so just seemingly perfectly normal, that I stayed that way all night and completely forgot about that I was a human being. I completely forgot about the earth or nature or anything else have ever existed. But then at some point, I happened to open my physical eyes, and I went like, oh my goodness, look at this. I'm in this universe, in this nature. I'm in Australia in this body. This is amazing. How amazing. But I had no identification with it, but it was absolutely magnificently beautiful and amazing. So I was like, okay. And I got up and took a shower and went and, talked to people, and they sold me the car, and I drove off and went back to where I came from, to my little garden shed in Mount Malloy. And a week passed, and the Japanese woman came by to pick me up, to take me out to lunch. And I was not in this state of consciousness anymore. And I was concerned that, what was that going to be like? I was back into being Sperry, being me, being a separate little thing in a body, different and distinct and comparable to other people. I was still very peaceful. I wasn't, very mind identified, but my mind had me captive, basically, which was isolating me from things and thoughts and other people. So she arrives in her little car, and she's not at all like she was the other night. She's like, if you had taken a small little diminutive Japanese woman that was about maybe 5 feet tall, or even less, and plugged her into a 240-volt wall socket, you could see the sparks coming off of her. She was just like this. She was so terrified of being in my presence. It was such a contrast. I didn't know what to do with it. And she behaved completely differently. She took control of the situation. Like probably, Japanese women want to have the man be in control. So she dictated to me how I was supposed to be in control by taking control of me, because I had no interest in being in control. And she told me, you drive like this. And I said, oh, okay. So I got behind the wheel and we drove off. And she was extremely uncomfortable. And to make a long story short, she couldn't stand it after a while. And I basically had to get out of the car and hitchhike back to where I lived. And so I learned viscerally in every possible way, because of the dualistic tearing of the unity that I had known, the peace and stillness and joy and absolute communion of total oneness consciousness that I had experienced with this other, who I'd not experienced that with anybody else to that depth or that degree. It was like being loved to the deepest and being loving to the deepest depth I could imagine with another human being. In the first 32 years of my life, my parents had been emotionally unavailable. They were lovely, artistic, crazy, eccentric people who were like other children, basically. But my brother and sister, my younger brother, older sister, they hadn't been able to be one with me. And nobody had ever known that my teachers or peer group or friends had never been able, and lovers had never been able to with me.
I want to interject here. This is what happens to humans, right? We live our lives feeling separate and alone, and then we meet someone, and for a moment we connect in this unified experience, and we call that love, right? We call that love because we've not experienced it. Maybe we've experienced it with our mother or father at some stage as a baby or whatever. And then we make it exclusive and we say, only this can happen between you and me. And because we don't experience it with everybody else. And so as I'm listening to your story and thinking about who you are and what you're bringing to this world, and what all gurus and teachers of consciousness bring to this world, it's trying to impart knowledge in order to give this experience, this unified, cohesive experience between all of us, and have a loving experience between everyone and not make it so exclusive. I love my husband, I love my partner, I love my baby, my cat, whatever, like make this love experience so exclusive, to make it inclusive and a natural, normal, physical experience of unity and oneness. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I've experienced that exact thing that you pointed to, Kara and Melissa. Each one of my partners, intimate partners, I had that moment of feeling one with them.
Right.
And that was the last moment I felt that with them. And I based the potential of my entire relationship on the fact that could happen permanently, hopefully. And then that would, she and I would learn how to impart this now that we had learned how to do it and could keep it alive to others. And that was always my hope, that would be crushed eventually. And then I would feel like, well, I obviously can't do it with this person, so I have to go find another person.
Right. It's like the bonds have been broken. Let me see if I can find it in somebody else. As you were speaking, Sperry, as you were speaking about the extraterrestrial beings, as I've had conversations with them around intimate relationship, they've told me that this unity experience is so present within everyone in their experience that intimate relationship as we have them on earth is not necessary, because they're not looking for love in the other person. We're looking for love in all the wrong places, right? Love exists within us, but then they have this agreements with other points of consciousness that are appear to be individualized, to have experience, whether that's a sexual experience or other experiences. So there are agreements put in place where you go, oh, this will be fun, let's do that together. But as we experience relationship on earth, like we're looking for that love relationship in the other, they don't have that. They don't have the marriage thing, and they just have agreements.
You were glitching there on my end, I'm sorry to say.
I was glitching. Yeah, so I think that with what you're bringing to this world, with all that you've done and all you're continuing to do, is to bring that cohesive experience through your work, that unified experience, that loving experience through media and social media. And because I don't know if talking about it's going to give us this experience. We really have to find a way of raising our vibe so that we're available to it, just like you did in Australia. So you said you were, you chewed over it since your NDE for 30 odd years and meditated and then let go of trying to make it happen. And in that letting go, it happened, right?
Well, that's what I've studied. You see, I've spent almost 40 years with thousands of people internationally with multicultural groups exploring how it's like, there's a door, can you step through the doorway or step out of Plato's cave? Can you step out of this mind-identified self, mind-made self that we're all trapped in, this self-isolating way of being, into the capital S self, or the no self, the anatta? Well, so I've experimented and through trial and error found a way through just a conversation where essentially the verbal analytic mind points to what is beyond words, to what is felt and sensed with other people, and the combined presence of the magnitude of our awakeness by our being aware of it and describing it, using words to point to it, the whole group becomes aware of our the magnitude of our combined awakeness that has no image. It's like a mirror. And we all, in about 15, 20 minutes, most of the time, we all shift into unity consciousness in a fully embodied way. The mind goes immediately quiet, and we get to this place that I got to through the near-death experience and through meditating before meeting the Japanese woman, reliably again and again and again. And I have recorded these conversations or these experiences and shared them through my YouTube channel. And the idea of the film and the social media around the clock in multiple languages app for free as a free membership is that people can learn how to do this through a video tutorial, and they can come together any time of the day or night, 24/7 in multiple languages, create their own groups or join groups in their language. And when they're feeling alone or isolated, and just step into, at the click of a button, into a social media group where they're sharing awareness of awareness. It works so reliably, Karen. It's really phenomenal how great it works. I mean, it really is reliable. And I guarantee you that you can talk yourself right into thoughtlessness fantastically. And you can do it on film. I spent $300,000 on 5 cameras and hiring people to work on a team in the Human Connection Institute. And for many, many months, we would film ourselves doing this type of practice, and then we'd look back to it on a bank of television screens and see how different ways of editing it, and whether we could see our audience in the future in the lens of the webcam that we were looking into, because we would stare with unbroken eye contact into each other's eyes when we were doing it in person, or into the webcam lens when we do it online. Like right now, when I stare into the webcam lens, you and I are, I can sense you're looking into my looking, and so I can sense our combined looking as something that I can intuit, at least embody, and my whole body, heart, and mind collapses effortlessly into this our oneness. And so when there is the people who watch this interview live or in recording, you can look into our eyes, or my eyes in this moment, for example, and you can sense our looking as a meditative object, like you would look upon a candle flame meditatively, and just look at the looking, keep looking at the looking in an undivided, effortless way. And if you just keep doing that, you will end up in this state of shared sensitivity in a fully embodied way with me and with Karen. And it becomes very relaxing, and you can feel everything just letting go, and the mind going silent and becoming still. And it's so beautiful. So I've been discovering ways to make this state effortlessly accessible to 7.5 billion people, basically.
Yeah, without having to have a sledgehammer spiritually awakening moment, or an NDE, or be hit by a car, or have a breakup with a relationship and have your heart broken. Yeah, I think that spiritual awakening needs to be a lot easier and gentler than it has been in the past. You know, as you speak about this, there's a young man here in Australia called Igor, who's a friend of my daughter's actually, who does what does he call it? Human connection something. Anyway, and he gets people to sit in front of each other and stare into each other's eyes. And I've done this many times over the years. And what comes up for people? So you're staring into somebody's eyes, sitting cross-legged on the floor or on chairs or whatever, and all your insecurities and giggling and wanting to look away, and all the stuff starts arising. Just like when you were sitting in your room and you saw that glob, that nebulous glob. As you were saying this, telling that story, I'm saying, what's he looking at when he's seeing that? And the thought I got was that you were looking at all your insecurities and thoughts of limitation, and just looking at all that stuff that we layer on ourselves that make us feel separate, right? That keep us locked in fear or separateness. And
well, it was so concentrated at that point that it was just pure sort of a greasy glob. But normally, yes, when I meditate in any given day, which I meditate every day, all that stuff that you were just describing comes up, and to be digested, to be integrated into my so-called conscious mind, which is only about 3 to 5% of my neurophysiological psychology. So every day it's necessary to digest our unconscious, what we sense and what we feel, into this new brain of our conceptual understanding of ourselves. But I wanted to say, and echoing what you just said a moment ago, Karen, is that, I said to myself when I was in that hut, that garden shed in North Queensland, I said, after I'd had this kind of an experience, and I've had that kind of an experience thousands of times, but since then, and versions of it before then even, but is that if everybody has to go through what I've been through, feeling, having a tree fall on me and then spending, basically my whole life through meditation trying to get back to my emotionally terrified and my physical body going through the death throes of that tree landing on me, right on my heart and taking me out for 7 hours, that if everybody had to go through that kind of thing to get to formless unity consciousness, then it's going to be a long time coming before humanity is enlightened.
It's going to be a long time coming. So that's what happened to you when you were 4. You had a tree fall, because you didn't explain what happened in your NDE. You had a tree fall on you when you were 4?
Yes, I was playing Zorro because my grandparents on my mother's side, when I was 2 and 4, committed suicide.
Wow.
My maternal grandfather had Parkinson's, and he was a doctor, an ears, nose, and throat doctor, and his hands were shaking, as happens with Parkinson's. And he was in a dignified society, at that day and age. It was a sort of upper crust, and that if you are going to lose your dignity as a doctor in your community, it's going to be insufferable, you imagine, as an ego, of course. And so he had all the means available to him. So he took his life when I was 2 years old, when my mother had already married and had my sister, who was 2 years older, and me. And so I was at the age of 2. He took his life, and my mother was devastated, of course, because she was loved her father dearly. Why would her father abandon her mother and her in such a horrible way, to take his own life? And so her mother was not very good socially anyway. And so she was, embarrassed and shamed by her, secretly behind her back by the members of her class, upper class community, like whispering behind her back kind of thing, probably. And so she was just horrified and didn't know how to deal with it. Wasn't very good anyway. Before that, she really depended upon her husband to kind of be her rock in social society. And so she took her life when I was 4, which, my mother was very close with her mother. And so it was very devastating. And my mother, she wouldn't share her grief. She was crying behind closed doors. I could feel her grief and experience it vicariously with her, but she wouldn't allow me to be on her lap, sharing her terror and her grief and her sorrow with her, because as a little boy, I could have done that. It would have been beautiful, but she felt it would hurt me, so she didn't let me do that. And so I ended up having this feeling of not being able to be one with my own mother at 2 and at 4, but you already, you've been in her womb, you're indivisible. And so I had to spend at least 9 or 10 years, the end of which I really accomplished in Australia before I went up and went into this garden shed. I was going into bathtubs where I'd make very, very hot water. I'd put olive oil on my eyelids and the sensitive parts of my skin and go underwater, super hot water, hold my breath until I felt like I was going to die, And for a few seconds, like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, I would have a clairvoyant experience of reuniting with myself inside of the womb, inside of my mother's womb, because I've discovered that she had taken an epidural that made her unconscious of giving birth to me. And so my parasympathetic nervous system was underdeveloped. And for about 2 weeks after I brought it to consciousness through doing this in the bathtub, and I'd continue to do it in the bathtub to get it more in focus and more in focus. But I was walking around with my arms trapped, pinned to the side of my body, even though I could flail my arms around freely. I was going through the re-experiencing and digestion and integration of what had been rendered unconscious because it was so traumatic to go through the birth experience without being able to physically participate in it and just be like drugged with the drugs that my mother had taken, because epidurals are not as advanced as the recent stuff. So so the child gets drugged. And so, and my wife, my Australian wife at the time, would get furious with me because I felt so drugged up, and she would scream at me while I was trying to do my work and study for seemingly no reason at all, just because she was probably feeling drawn into it, and she was feeling like she was being drugged, and because of me. And so I felt like I couldn't take it anymore, because she had boiling water dropped on her when she was in the womb. And I think that was partly why I was experiencing that, by her sister having knocked over a boiling kettle of water on her mother's stomach before she was born, just before she was going to be born. And so my wife had tremendous traumas physically. She'd become this beautiful dancer. She'd grown too tall to be a ballet dancer, which is what she wanted to do. So she went into jazz dance and became one of the top jazz dancers in the Lido in Paris and in the big NGM shows in Vegas and in Monaco and in, what's that place in Mexico? Anyway, that's about the time that we met. So, and the drama continued on. And she really forced me to get in touch with this and deal with it, but it was very difficult to deal with her being so angry at me at some times, which her mother had been with her father, because he had been on the Burmese railway for 5 years, and the Japanese had nearly murdered him because they just worked him to death. Somehow he survived. So there's this whole chain link of human beings being traumatized that I was needing to adjudicate and pass through and make sense of and bring to consciousness and digest through this body, heart, and mind. It was very, very impactful and very confronting. And so I'm telling you because some of you probably have experienced stuff like this. So this is sort of the ingredients that I felt like, boy, if people have to go through this, they're never going to wake up. So that's why I have spent my entire life trying to figure out how to bring about global empathy and global enlightenment.
Oh, darling one, I'm hearing you. You know, the thing about the traumas that we carry, sorry, my throat's a bit scratchy today. The thing about the traumas that we carry, whether there are traumas, past life traumas, our parents' traumas, the collective lineage traumas, that in order to transmute them, they do have to be witnessed and seen in some way, but we don't have to suffer through them again, but we do have to witness them. I don't know why. That seems to be some law of the universe. We cannot stuff them down and shove them under the carpet and have them go away. We just can't. They have to emerge and be witnessed, or I don't know. I don't even know if witnessed is the right word.
Interrupt you a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, you know how cows, they eat and chew grass, which is indigestible to us, and they have several stomachs.
Right.
Well, I think our unconscious holds the bag for these very severe traumas that we can't digest right away. And so we wait until later life where we're stronger and more established as a separate individual who is brave and doesn't have any reason to be afraid. And then in order to regroup and integrate and become able to access our full awareness, we have to re-encounter all that we've disowned with what awareness we still have left, because the awareness has been necessary to go with the trauma, because the trauma is embedded in awareness. And so when we bring the awareness, the trauma back to awareness, we reconnect with the awareness that went away with the trauma, and they have to like the cow, chew and redigest in the primary stomach what was left in the cud. They so call it the cow has cud.
Yeah, the
So
trauma is embedded in awareness, and so in order to overcome the trauma, we suppress our awareness. Oh, that's so interesting. That's so interesting, Sperry. Yeah, and I wanted to say that the best personal growth workshop on earth is intimate relationship for bringing up all the trauma.
Yeah, it pops the cork.
It pops. Pops that cork. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Shakti Gawain said it. I don't know if she's still alive. Is she still alive? Do you know Shakti Gawain?
I think she might be. She was actually on one of the publishers on some of Eckhart's books.
Right.
A few years back.
She said personal relationship is the best. Yeah, I think she said that. Personal relationship, intimate relationship is the best personal growth course in town. Don't avoid them. Yeah. Yes, it pops the cork. Right. So that's so interesting. Now there's an aha moment. So we suppress awareness in order to overcome our trauma. And so by bringing up the trauma again, awareness returns. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
It's like we keep losing. Like, let's say we have a trauma where there was a blue, stuffed doll or something, or fuzzy wuzzy teddy bear or something. Every time we see the color blue, we, to some extent, begin to recall the trauma by association. And then we have to create a secondary repression. Like some people take ethogens and stuff comes to the surface and they have to repress it again. And then it's harder to integrate it and digest it the next time. But so we go through our early life almost recalling what we have repressed or suppressed, and re-repress it or suppress it. And so there are layers and layers of repression and suppression. And so when we finally, if we want to utilize, as we get older, we're experiencing everything, every moment we're experiencing everything that we've ever experienced by association, so that we can integrate and make sense of all that we can possibly comprehend given everything that we've ever experienced. So we need all of our awareness as we get older and more complicated, exponentially more complicated. We have to go back, especially when we get to about into our 30s and late 30s. They say, when we hit 40, it's like being reborn again. And we have to ultimately go back and integrate everything that we've disowned by bringing it and integrating it, digesting it into full consciousness, so we have all possible awareness to deal with our life as we grow older and more complicated.
Do you think growing older makes us more complicated? I think it makes I've been less complicated since I've got it's definitely less complicated since I've got older. Life is just so much effortless. But then I've done the work you have to have done the work. Otherwise you become like a robot. Right. As the awareness of the trauma arises, whether that trauma was this lifetime, past lifetimes, or whether my mother's trauma or father's trauma, I've dealt with it as it's I haven't suppressed it. And and then life becomes a lot less complicated when you're not dealing with all that stuff, Yeah, a lot less complicated. Oh, darling, well, we've been yakking for ages. There's so much to say. But how
Can
do
I
you...
say one more thing about that before,
Yeah,
and then I
sure.
won't need to say anymore? Is that so? Everything we've experienced is metabolized or made sense of in the context of all that we are experiencing and all that we might experience. So the realm of what we're perceiving and what we're imagining is getting more complicated. And if we do the work, we become more and more aware of being awareness, which is holding all of that in ever increasing complexity, but we're not identified with it. We're enjoying it and finding it marvelous and amazing and beautiful, like having amazing lucid dreams that are delightful and transcendental. But because we're not identified as being what we think or what we feel or what we sense, our lives are getting more and more aware of awareness and more mirror-like, where we are that which is unidentified and indivisible and immortal and is deathless, because in the near-death experience, you realize that you cannot die. That which is awareness, being aware of itself, cannot be divided against itself. And so no thought or thing or space or time, energy or matter, mind or body can divide that which is spaceless and timeless, and that which is transcends all matter and energy, mind and body, space and time. So what do you feel anything about, found anything about that, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. As we reintroduce ourselves to our awareness as our trauma arises, yeah, we become aware of the matrix, so to speak. We become aware, just like you said, you were, awake inside the dream, that you realized it was a dream. You take this world less seriously, and you see it as the game, as the play that it is, as the stage show that it is, that you're participating in. You become more aware of that as you reintroduce yourself to awareness. Do you think, Sperry, well, I suppose that's what you're trying to do with your work. Do you think we can reintroduce ourselves to awareness without the trauma? Now, there's a question. Or do you think the trauma has to...
Why I feel that we can work from the top down. What I find with the groups, you see, as with the Japanese woman, that let's say I had a group of like 6, 8, 10, 18, 30, 70, 1,000 people. The magnitude of our combined awareness brings us into that state where we're in absolute serene stillness and bliss, in joy and unconditional communion of pure love, true love, I would say. It's just that when you leave the group, people would miss being in the group and being in that field of organized awareness that is anchored in, whatever number of people. And they would say, Sperry, since I was in that group, I've been walking around in the grocery store, on the sidewalk, hoping and praying that I would run into somebody who was in that group that we were in, because I feel more alone and isolated than I ever have felt in my life, because now I know that I'm isolated and alone, trapped inside of my ego, my mind-made version of myself, and I don't want to be here anymore. So let me tell you about this guy who I found out is a friend of my dear friend that I've been working, the most brilliant physicist I've ever found on this planet, Dr. James E. Beekler, who's amazing, his work. We've been collaborating together and contributing to each other's works and coming up with a common model that is just absolutely breathtaking. The physicists that understand it, they're just like blown away at how it resolves all the issues in the sciences. And so we're very proud of being, not needing to be proud, by being nobody going nowhere. But it's amazing that we have solved the riddles that will keep us. And it's the scientific, military, industrial, political, medical establishment that is the left-brained, trained, 12 years of schooling, where they're punished if they don't spit it back at the teacher, through memorization. So many people in the power elite are very mind identified, and all they know how to do is to dominate and dictate and be authoritarian. And so we've got to, they're the ones that I'm really worried about. And so that's one of the reasons that I said, I've got to find a way, or awareness has got to find a way to simultaneously educate the mind identified patriarchy, the power elite who want to eradicate us, to genocide us and cull the population, because they can't, in their own wildest mind-made imagination, imagine any other way to deal with what's happening on the planet right now with 7.5 billion people, other than killing off a few billion of us. And so they've even said, through the pipelines, they said, if somebody, we've spent billions of dollars trying to figure out how to do this, the Iron Mountain report and stuff like that. We've got the most intelligent minds that are all left brain scholars working on this, trying to figure out how to deal with the situation. Can we deal with it without having wars, for example? And so they study that, the Iron Mountain report, and they go, no, I think we need wars. We need continuous war. We need to have constantly keep the war machine going. And we have to keep everybody terrified and pulverized. And we've got to cull the population. We've got to get rid of billions of people. We've got to do, mass genocide in a very secretive way so that people can't stop it and blah, blah. While the 99% say, wait a minute here, you're not going to cull us. We're going to, we're waking up, you crazy people, you 0.0001 percenters, you billionaire club. We're waking up here, and we know that we can wake up and smell the roses and be awake as one and many, and we can handle our impact on the ecosystem. If you guys in the corporate elite would stop being the owners and perpetrating these corporations that are destroying the environment, and if you would just stop doing that, and start being equal to the rest of us, we could actually have heaven here on earth by sharing a commonly sensed consciousness. So we're at that point where the looking glass technology says, we're going to win this one. And as we come out of this, we're going to be able to have these films that re-educate us and experientially, and the social media applications and so forth. And, we're going to be able to look at this in talk shows and in print media, et cetera, et cetera. And we're all going to get like our ET, people that have been tinkering with us, who want us more than anything to be awake as one greater body, heart, and mind. Like, look at one last thing is Esther and Jerry Hicks. Jerry has passed away, but Esther and Esther continues to say and represent Abraham, which is a collective intelligence saying to us, you've got to feel what it is that you want to have happen. Well, they're doing that as a collective. It's a lot easier to do it as a collective. So I'm advocating that there is an easy way that we can do this as a collective through the Global Empathy Accelerator Partnership Proposal. And you can join in, you can propose ways of doing it, participate, get paid. You can contribute to it monetarily if you want, but we're going to do this, and we're going to shift the whole separative mindset of humanity and have enlightenment on this planet and bring heaven to earth, period. That's it. The cork's going to be out of the bottle.
Determined. I love your determination and your passion, Sperry. Okay, I want to get into how people can participate in it. So you honestly believe that there is a agenda in place by the corporate elites to depopulate the planet?
Oh, unquestionably.
Unquestionably. Okay, interesting. So I think that will happen, because you know what I see, Sperry? I see a lot of the especially since the Second World War, actually, I see a lot of the people that are on the planet, probably half, are the light workers, the light weavers, the star beings that actually came to Earth at this time to be a part of this global agenda to help raise the consciousness, to be a part of the shift, to, as we move into the next epoch, the next experience on planet Earth. I really believe that the population.
I came here from another.
You came here.
I came here from Surf Dimension.
Right.
Actually, about 15 years ago, some of my friends, we were all just like white light with a sort of a golden tinge. We had no real body, no interior body or organs, as many people have reported. This friend of mine has spent 22 books and nearly 50 years studying the afterlife, where it's 10,000 times as more ecstatically magnificent, and we can be aware of all our unconsciousness when we're over there. They come back here because it's so much more challenging and confronting. We have to take care of so many things here that we don't have to over there on the other side in the afterlife. But anyway, I heard the calling and I said, oh, that should be simple. I'm going to go to Earth, help out. All we have to do is notice what we notice together. This should be a total piece of cake, for heaven's sakes.
From that perspective,
I came here, was born into, through my, chosen mother and father, who were gentle, artistic, eccentric people. They were probably some of the best. Everybody told me that my parents were like the best of the best of the best. They're really great people, but they were still cuckoo, they weren't emotionally anchored or integrated into the consciousness, for heaven's sakes, in their generation. And so that's why I probably, I was born on the Buddha's birthday. That's the Wesak, the occult New Year. And there's hundreds of thousands of people born on that day. But I was born within, like an hour or two of the exact moment in which the moon is full in Scorpio, and the sun is in Taurus, which is a different day every year. And it's that day, apparently, that Gautama Buddha was born, enlightened, and died on that same astrological aspect. And it said in astrology that if you're born on that aspect, especially close to the full moon there, directly opposite the sun, that you basically have to turn yourself into nothing in order to survive it. Otherwise, it'll just be crushed to death. So I was crushed to death right away.
At 4.
And then I got on with being every bug and leaf and person on the planet. And everybody who was evil and awful, I felt them in the cells and atoms and molecules of my body. And the first 30 years of my life leading up to that 32-year experience in the garden shed, I felt like I was being torn to pieces and put back together again, being torn apart and sewn back together, as is the case with many shamans. I had a book once, long before that, was about the shamanistic traditions of 5,000 different shamanistic sects on Earth. Every single one of those 5,000 sects, they talk about the shamans, in order to serve their community, they're chopped into a million pieces and then boiled alive in oil and then sewn back together or nailed back together, or with, whatever, some horrible thing that you can't possibly imagine happening to you. And that is exactly what happened to me, exactly what happened with all those 5,000 other, sects and all the probably hundreds of thousands or millions of other shamans that it had ever happened to, so that I could be of service. So that's what happened to this one here. Being nobody, going nowhere, is anybody and somebody, and going everywhere and nowhere forever as the eternal now.
Being nobody, going nowhere. I love it. I think that, as you have done your work at your generation and my generation, it's definitely easier for the younger generations to wake up. And I'm seeing that, so much easier. And, the work that you're bringing to this world, and I'm bringing, and Igor's bringing, and all the people that are bringing consciousness work, consciousness technology through meditation and eye staring and all sorts of things, is making the awakening process so much more beautiful and easier and blissful, and without having to be torn apart or squashed or whatever. It's it's
they're part of the single body, heart, and mind with us. So they're in this communion of how it can be for those of us who have done all this work. So, generation by generation, it's gotten quite a bit easier. I mean,
oh God, absolutely.
if I had gone through what my mother and father had gone through, I would have been like them.
Yeah. I remember when I was running the Academy of Light in my 30s, and everyone was talking about their pain and their trauma. And there was another girl who was about my generation at the time who was helping. And we were washing the dishes one night doing something. And she said, looked at me, she said, I feel really out of place in this group. And I said, why? She said, I haven't had any trauma in my life. I've come to spiritual awareness without trauma. And I'm like, well, good for you. She didn't have an NDE or her parents died or disease or, divorce or whatever. And I'm like, good for you that you could investigate, who you are and why you're here without having to be having a spiritual sledgehammer moment. Yeah.
Well, I found very rare people like that I found through my, thousands of people in these 40 years of groups. I did meet one family who were all in unity consciousness so blissfully and beautifully, but they were like terrified of being with anybody else in the rest of the world because everybody else is in separatist self-consciousness. And that the people who really live and have not been traumatized, in order for them to be in relationship or to learn from experiencing becoming one with all the rest of us who have been or are still traumatized, they have to go through the tunnel, dig it from the other side of the mountain, which is kind of what I had to do coming from where I came from, in absolute, blissful wonder and joy, in telesomatic, transcendental, pure, unconditioned love. I had to go like, oh my God, how am I going to survive all this divisiveness and polarization that I'm viscerally experiencing with my parents and my brother and sister? They're all fighting with each other. My mother and father would fight, not all the time, but there was that rub, the friction between them, and my brother and sister were fighting. And then they'd be friends, and then they'd fight, and they'd be friends and be fight. And I'd be like, and everybody at school, I'd have a friend over for, to play with, and he would like destroy whatever toys I had. And I'd be like, how am I supposed to be nice to this person?
Yeah, but therein lies the challenge, isn't it? I think unity consciousness is not about being in groups and feeling unified with loving other beings. It's feeling unified with everyone. It's feeling unified with the, the controlling elite, and knowing that they are the extension of source energy as much as you are, or the baby or the kitten is, I
have had to learn to love them as if I were them.
Right.
Throughout that first 30 years of life. I mean, I had to embody them so intimately and understand them through experiencing them so intimately, and forgive them and love them. And I'd experienced Kali, I'd become Kali, with the severed head and the lotus flower and everything. And I'd be like, oh, that's what Kali's been doing all this, time immemorial, dealing with all the self-isolating people, by treating them as flowers and treating them as people worthy of having their head cut off. So, because in death, there is no death. And we learn by dying that what we are as deathless consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. The people that are trying to control this world and rid the population, what's it called? The agenda of trying to cull the population. What's that called? There's a name for it.
Agenda 21, Agenda 2030.
I look at these people and, I look at these people and they're so in their intellect and they're trying to work life out from the level of the intellect and the mind only, and not from the level of this cohesive, conscious connection, unified, empathic connection. And like they're putting two and two together and without, and so I really
what if they did though, Karen? I mean, what if they did allow themselves to really be in their bodies, in their hearts, and feel that they were everybody and everything.
Well, interestingly enough, one of them that's on the
they would have an embolism, you know,
that have an embolism,
non-stop embolism for at least a decade, you know.
Well, one of them that's on the world stage that a lot of people are talking about at the moment because of what's happening, and I won't mention his name. You know, he's been through a personal trauma, and I was watching that unfold in the news, and I was thinking to myself, well, good, maybe that'll put him in his heart and get him out of his head.
Can we mention who it is?
No, I'm not going to mention his name.
Give
but
me a little.
It's obvious.
Do it in code.
So his wife left him recently, you know, and they were very much a team.
You mean he's the guy that's like this?
Yes. And I was thinking as I saw that unfold.
He was hanged.
Well, that's what people
after a tribunal.
Well, that's what people say. I don't know if I believe that, Sperry.
I believe it is genuine. I'm here to say.
I don't know.
I have been studying it as a scientist. I believe it is genuine.
You think that they've knocked him off, like they've killed him?
What we're seeing is a body double.
Okay, that's what you think.
Keep up appearances so the mass of people don't feel that, you know.
Well, that's a whole nother show, Sperry. That's a whole nother show. Yeah. One that we can't have on YouTube platforms. Yes. So we can have that conversation on other platforms. But that's
we haven't said anything untoward here.
No, we haven't. But I've had a friend say that to me. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. That he went to a tribunal.
Yeah, I didn't believe them at first either, but through months and months of really studying it, you know, kinesthetically, intuitively, and in many other ways, it's
okay.
You can really come to.
Here's what doesn't make sense, and this show is going on forever. But here's what doesn't make sense: if he was hanged, as you say, and had a tribunal, why would they bother putting up a body double? I mean, what's the purpose of that?
Well, in order to keep face, because
but who's keeping face? I mean, if there was some justice that was placed on him, like I don't think that killing anyone or incarcerating anyone is any sort of form of justice. I think reforming people and getting them in their heart is more justified than
I've worked in prisons. I'm telling you,
than torturing people.
You can't. It's easier said than done. So
well, I'm sure it is, but I'm still saying that if some sort of form of what people think is justice has happened, why bother having a body double?
Well, like I say, what is it? The
controlling elite?
No, the ability since 2012, sorry, the ability to see the future. They can actually see what the different timelines, how they're playing out. And since 2012, the percentages have not changed. The power elite are not, their timeline is not going to happen. The mass of humanity is going to be free of them, okay? That is 79 point something percent potential has stayed solid. Now, it was just reviewed just the other day by one of the people that is at the core of the military that has been in charge of that area of investigation, okay, from the US military. And he said that, they haven't disclosed this result to the general public until now, because they wanted to see over the last, whatever it is, 9 years since 2012, almost 2022, that it's been consistent, that unless the forces of light, and that includes the ETs and the Galactic Federation, as well as it's about 70% of the US military that are on our side, and the other bunch are basically, are siding with the power elite, that unless we make the so-called good guys, unless we make a terrible mistake, there's no possibility of them winning. And what they are doing is they know that they're up against it here, and that this is their very last chance. It's like Hitler, blowing up every bridge and killing all the livestock and doing everything he possibly could to slow down. My father backing up what's his name's army coming in from the west, and General Patton. My father was in Iceland for 5 years as a sergeant of munitions, and was landed in the third wave on D-Day to back up Patton's army to go into Berlin, and the Russians were coming in from the other side to get Hitler and take over Berlin and stop the war, basically. So I'm going to say with all that,
I don't know.
Goodness gracious.
So basically you're saying,
of course, Hitler did everything he possibly could. It had a special name. He called it, wasn't slash and burn. It was something like that. He did everything he could to make everybody as unhappy as possible and kill as many people as he could possibly kill before he himself was actually, as it turns out, he was ferried off to Argentina. So he did survive the war. They made it look like he committed suicide with his wife, but that actually didn't happen. And so the power elite, with their 30% potential, they are doing everything they possibly can to make us make a mistake so they can make their timeline happen. They're not going to give up until, the deal is done.
I've heard that. I've heard that. And what I'm seeing, Sperry, is that I'm seeing beautiful, conscious people that have been meditating for years get caught up in the stories, in the game of war between the good and the bad forces. And in their attention to it, they're totally dropping their consciousness as they fight the bad guys, like as they're fighting against the evil in the world. And I'm watching this unfold in the consciousness community, and I'm like going, that is actually not what we're here to do. We're here to stay in the love and the unity. As we judge another, whether it's the dude that we were talking about before that you say is being hanged, or the global elite, or the controllers, or the Hitlers of the world, as we judge them and deem them as evil, then we create that separation that you're here on earth to remedy, to bring unity into the consciousness.
I have a slightly different understanding that the same way that we have to, get hold of our cud like a cow and our traumas and bring it back to be digested and integrated into consciousness.
Yeah.
That we are also not just individually traumatized. We have been a collective consciousness that is collectively unconscious.
Right.
And so we are individuals, those people that are doing what you're saying, which is, I agree, is not the best thing they could be doing. But if they haven't done the work, they are essentially bringing up to the foreground of their individual consciousness all that they have not integrated and digested into pure consciousness, the pure consciousness that you're pointing to as pure love. They have not done that yet, but it's just the same as them, as people needing to do that individual work. They need to do this indivisible work because the collective has been utterly traumatized through all these wars, through all the insanity of humanity. We have been traumatized as plants and animals and people, and the whole of us has been gone through so much that we have to, some people will still continue to have a knee-jerk response, like when hit with a rubber mallet just below the kneecap, and the leg goes, the foot goes bouncing out. You can't stop from doing it.
I get it.
This is like a knee-jerk reaction. People have to polarize and say they're the enemy, they're the bad guys, and we're the good guys. There's going to be people that have to do that as part of their process.
Yeah. The insanity of humanity. I love that. Those two words together, the insanity of humanity. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's almost as if when you do your consciousness work and you think that you're love and light, you tell everyone you're love and light, right? Then you see the atrocities unfold in front of you as they are revealed. And then all that is inside you that you haven't dealt with, that is not love and light, is brought up as you see the collective trauma unfold, not the personal trauma, but the collective trauma. And so it is an opportunity to then, bring the light and understanding to that as we experience, as we witness the control dramas. And I don't know, you've been watching the news, right? I mean, on social media, you've been seeing what's happening.
I spend a lot of time every day.
Right. Well, you've been
staying in touch with the collective.
Well, me too.
Miasm.
And you've been seeing what's happening down under, right? With the
Oh,
police.
yes.
Right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So as we witness that, I mean, it's going to bring up all these feelings of unfairness and all that stuff that we've not dealt with that we think we have, right? So yeah, and then we have to meet those feelings with understanding and light. Yeah, so it's a perfect opportunity for more transmutation of trauma. Yeah.
So, I mean, if we cling to it should be this way or it shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't be how it is, then we're not really being effortless. We really have to surrender. The most powerful thing, there's actually a book called The Power of Awareness, which I highly recommend. Making no effort whatsoever and accepting and allowing everything to be exactly as it is what Jiddu Krishnamurti recommended to come full circle. And also Eckhart Tolle to just experience the pain body and realize that the pain body just needs to be felt. And if we just allow ourselves to experience and accept what is there as it is without trying to change it, it becomes integrated and digested by that effortless awake awareness, which is choiceless and mirror-like, and is woven and is reignited to be able to be liberated from being polarized and polarizing. And that's why I would say, who is, and others who have also been adjudicated in these military tribunals, they've definitely got body diables. You can actually notice that they're not the same people and they're not the same heights. They actually know who they've looked into who the actual actors are in some cases, who are taking their place.
So you would agree with the narrative that's out there that the president of the country that you belong to is another double?
Absolutely. No,
I just think he's had a lot of plastic surgery. He's had so much plastic surgery.
No, he is not. The real guy is in, if he's not already passed away, he has been actually since, I don't know, quite a while back. He has been in hospital under, what's it called? It's severe care or something, has some name for it. But no, he has been out of commission for some time.
Interesting. Okay. Well, before we go, can
you publish this whole talk?
I'm going to publish all of it because we've not done too much.
Thank you, Karen. I've been in interviews before. They say, well, we can only use an hour of this, and I'm like,
I'm going to put all of it up, but people have a choice whether they sit and listen to the whole 2 hours.
Yeah.
But can people get involved with what you're offering? So you've got this PDF out that you're bringing to people, which is the PDF proposal.
Well, the Global Empathy Accelerator Partnership Proposal has, people would read through that if they want to. Well,
they get that from your website? Yeah, on your website?
You can, but you have to find it on the website. I probably sent it to you.
I will put the link to it on my page where you're on my website and in the YouTube. And
I could send you a whole page full of links that I would recommend if you like, if you don't.
You can do that.
Have any limit to the number of links. But essentially, different strokes for different folks. Some people want to, see something very short. So I have many 2 or 3 minute videos. Some people want to look at the physics, the hardcore physics, and I have, which I'm one of the pioneers of, and so I have my physics, and then the work that I've done with the person I've been working with, and he's even more rigorous. If you need even more rigorous physics,
are you doing any online kind of group connecting sort of sessions?
Yes, I have 2 I offer every week. They're available on Meetup, and I'll send you the link for the Meetup groups if you like. And so there's one Sunday morning. It's at 8 a.m. Hawaii time, which is UTC -10. And then there is one on Wednesday evening First of all, that one 8 a.m. 10 UTC is so that people even in Eastern Europe can participate, because it's about a 12-hour difference for them. So the whole of the United States, stretching all the way to the Arab Emirate, can participate in those groups.
So that's an online group?
Those are both all Zoom groups.
Okay. Do you do physical groups as well?
I love to do physical groups. People can actually ask me to arrange a group. They can say, and I do the groups for free unless anybody wants to donate. I make a practice of making everything available for free, if at all possible, so that other people will feel like they can just turn around and offer it for free, and they can pay it forward to whomever. In fact, we used to, the psychiatrist friend of mine and I, he'd said, this is so amazing, Sperry. Let's ask everybody that we show how to do this to, that if we show it to you, then you show it to 2 more people. And if we do that, and everybody pays it forward to 2 more people, the whole of humanity will start doing awareness of awareness, and we'll have an awakened society on the planet.
Yeah, awareness of awareness. I love that. Notice what you notice. Awareness of awareness.
It's noticing the noticing. The key is this. This is the basic key. Is that we are been taught to be objectified and objectify everything, which is the noun and the predicate in the sentence of life. All we have to do is shift our awareness to the verb in the sentence. Notice that right now our thinking doesn't have an image to it. Our smelling, even though we may be smelling something, the verb, the activity of smelling, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling, being, noticing, all these verbs don't have an image, don't have an objectified image attached to them. They're an activity. They're a living, breathing, thinking, feeling, sensing, knowing activity. And just by paying attention to the activity of perceptual consciousness, we can gradually wean ourselves off of sweets and drugs and self-abuse and being negatively charged and polarizing, to realize what it is that is not identified with any object at all. And we learn to share that verb, that activity of sensing, feelings, knowing, being, intimately sharing with others and all others, ultimately in our meditations, whether we're with people or not, and ultimately get to this state of transpersonal unity consciousness, moment after moment, indivisibly and seamlessly. And then we are creating heaven on earth, we're in heaven on earth, and we feel absolutely heavenly.
Sperry Andrews, beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today. It's just been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much.
Namaste. As I said, the one in you and the one in me notices the one that we are, and all is well.
All is well.
Thank you so much, Karen. You have been absolutely a blessing, and so beautiful to share and know what we are and what the truth of the true love that we truly are together. So lovely of you. Thank you.
Oh, what an amazing conversation with Sperry Andrews. Oh, wow. We could have talked about so many other things. Maybe we will get together and have that conversation that we didn't have about all the other things that he was talking about. I don't know if I believe all of them, but anyway, the world is an infinite possibility. All things are possible, good and bad, I suppose. Yeah, we were just chatting, as you do, and talking about where he lives in Hawaii, and he was telling me about when he lived in Sydney. He lived just up the road from where I live now, and he said that when he was in his 30s, I would have been in my 20s at the time. He spent a lot of time on Tamarama Beach, which was a beach that I spent a lot of time in when I was in my 20s, a lot of time it was called Glamorama. All the beautiful people used to hang out on Tamarama Beach. Everyone was always so gorgeous and thin and beautiful. And I always felt, even though I was gorgeous and thin and beautiful, around all these gorgeous, beautiful people, I felt very inferior. That not good enough thing, was rife when I was in my 20s. But I spent a lot of time at Tamarama Beach. He said he lived overlooking the beach and he'd see the waves crashing and the spray come up and then the rainbows in the spray and how beautiful it is. And I'm like, I know, it is absolutely beautiful. It's a little beach here in Sydney. It's next to the famous Bondi Beach, which is a big beach, a big tourist beach. It's this little deep alcove of a beach. Yeah, we used to call it Glamorama. Everyone was beautiful in the 80s. This was back in the 80s. Everyone had their high, bikini things on. They used to wear the up over their hips, sort of anyway. But yes, he spent some time in Australia. Fascinating man, absolutely fascinating man. He turned 70 this year. Amazing, isn't it? He looks good. We were just talking about where he came from. I said to him, my guides told me that you're an ET that came to Earth to teach consciousness. And he goes, yeah, I know that too. But, excuse me, he doesn't remember which planets he spent time in. I said to him, I could tune in and tell you, but I don't have time for that now. But he just remembers being coming from source consciousness, from this sort of nebulous, unformed point of consciousness and making a decision to be one of the volunteers that came to Earth after the World War, after they let off the atomic bombs, to help raise the consciousness of this world, because that's what will fix this world. We need to raise our consciousness and be more loving and unified and understand that we're all one. And when we do understand that, we can't do the things that we do to each other and to the planet. We just can't. When you understand, when you know yourself as the other, and you feel that viscerally, you feel that connection, like what they think you think and what they feel you feel. It's what empathy is, right? When you understand that on a collective level, you just can't do what we are doing to planet Earth and to each other. You can't affect that same pain on the other or on the planet or the animals, because you're doing it to yourself and you're feeling that pain. So yes, that unified consciousness will be what shifts this world. Yes. So I asked him to come into the inner sanctum next year, and maybe we can do some exercises on feeling that unified consciousness. But I feel it with everyone I meet now anyway. It's part of raising your consciousness when you meet another and you're just in their presence with awareness. You just start to feel as they feel. You start to know what they know. You start to merge and be one with them. And then you start to know what they don't know. Like as I'm tuning into Sperry, I'm knowing things about him that he doesn't know about him. That's what psychic awareness is, right? It's that access to awareness that we were talking about. It's a beautiful thing. I'm not going to talk too much. It's been a long show. It could have been longer. And this is another one of his paintings behind me. So he's a beautiful artist. And if you go to his website or go to his Facebook page, I'll put the links on my page, on my website. You'll see all his links there. You'll see the links to his art. Isn't it beautiful? It's abstract, but just gorgeous colors. I love that one. I'm loving the one behind me at the moment. Yeah, he was showing me, when I turned off the recording, he was showing me his garden in Hawaii. Oahu. I think he's in Oahu. I did ask him where he's living. In Hawaii. Oh, looks so beautiful. I'd love to go back to Hawaii. So gorgeous over there. All right, I'm not going to talk too much more. Join our inner sanctum. All the regular stuff I say. Join our group. Subscribe and like and communicate and let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts, and share the shows with your friends. And I'll check you next time. Love you all. Remember to check out that book, Awakened by Death, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.